have our annual business meeting, which won't take very long, and then we'll be able to mill around and then start Michael's program. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Townshend Historical Society, its annual meeting, November 4th, 2018. I'm going to have an agenda here, but I'm going to defer the President's official remarks until just before Michael's presentation, just before 2 o'clock, which is the announced time of his presentation. We'll start out with the minutes of the last annual meeting. Marge Holt is the secretary.
Annual meeting, November 12th, 2017.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that concludes the annual meeting of the Townshend Historical Society. The program will begin at 2, or within, hopefully right around 2. You're free to walk around. Prior to the program, I'll give the official President's report for the year, and then Heidi will introduce Michael as the speaker. Michael's sitting over here. If you want to speak with him ahead of time, you may. Otherwise, I should point out, I'll make it's part of the announcement, but there is, besides the things for sale, there's a raffle over there of some maple syrup and a couple of Vermont books. And the way I'm just used to doing this at other meetings, and you take the scissors and you cut the little thing in half. It has 2 numbers. You put your money in the bucket, $1 per ticket, or 3 tickets for $2, and then you keep, one number. Don't put both numbers in the bucket. You won't win very much with that. And then you'll have people will have a choice of what they want. There's a quart of maple syrup, a half pint, and a couple of Vermont whiskey books. Otherwise, we'll got about 15 minutes to go around.
James, please. James,
I was in there the other day and I said, pumping station?
Welcome all of you to our presentation about stone arch bridges done by Michael Weitzner. I'm Charlie Marchand. I'm the president of the Townshend Historical Society. For those of you that weren't here a few minutes ago, we had our annual meeting and got that taken care of. And I deferred my official president's report to now because I figured correctly there'd be a few more people present to hear me blab on for the next 45 minutes or so. Not quite. So I'd like to welcome you, and this is my annual report. I want to thank the trustees of the society for doing all the good work that we do. And I will point them out again. Robert DeGrenier is here, Lee Petty is there, Heidi Clausen is somewhere back, Eileen McGrath, or we'll be doing in the future. This past year we had a booth at the Pumpkin Festival. I went to a conference in Grand Isle on how to come up with funds for projects like the Stone Arch Bridge project. We have a wonderful website. If you want to look things up, you should check it out. Some of our projects that one of which we sort of completed, we have a barn tour. If you want to drive around, we have a brochure, look at an assortment of barns in the township. I should point out that some of these barns are on private property, so it's meant as a driving tour and to see the barn from the road. If you want to physically look at the barn more closely, you should ask the individual landowner. We have a case downstairs that we change frequently, put a display in. We're trying to work on a possible heritage walk/bike tour, where you would go from the state park to the dam, or from the dam to the state park. And in the process, you will be able to see some of the stone arch bridges and, of course, Scott Bridge. That would be in cooperation with the Corps of Engineers and also the Townshend State Park people. I recently went to a county roundtable down in Brattleboro where all of the historical societies and libraries in Lincoln County were invited to come and explain their collection. And so I participated in that. You'd be amazed at the wide variety of collections that are available in Lincoln County. If you have any questions about that, I have the list of different groups that were there, and I can explain how you can get in contact with those people. We have a raffle going on. There's been some questions. I'm not very good at putting all the explanations. The basics of it are, there's a slip of paper with a number on it, you cut it in half, you put one number in the bucket for the drawing, and you keep the other number. The tickets are $1 each, or 3 tickets for $2. Those of you that are members, your dues are due. I should point that out. There's also a program next Wednesday night in Jamaica that involves sharpshooters and Howard Coffin and Vermont soldiers in the Civil War. That's at 7 o'clock at the Jamaica Town Hall. I should point out, to the best of my knowledge, there are no Townshend Civil War veterans who were a member of the sharpshooters unit, but there were some from Weitzner, Jamaica, and Newfoundland. One of the questions comes up about our puzzles. We may run out, and there's been requests for puzzles. We're probably going to order more, and we can certainly take your order. And if it's something that needs to be mailed, you can make that arrangement too, as long as the postage is covered. Now, our main event here, I'm sorry, I have one other thing. I'd like to have a moment of silence for the loss of one of our members, Iris Howe. She helped out with a lot of stuff, including identification of pictures over the years. And in my own background with cemetery work, she helped out with some cemetery work over the years and getting certain gravestones repaired, particularly ones in the Howe Cemetery up on Windham Hill Road. So if we could have a moment of silence for Iris. Thank you. Our main event is the Stone Arch Bridges, and I'm going to introduce in a minute Heidi Clausen to introduce Michael. But when I was about 8 years old, my father and mother took me to Gettysburg. And even as an 8-year-old, I was stunned to think that a large group of people would walk across an open field that was a mile wide and get shot at over and over again. In my career as a history teacher, I had the opportunity to go back to Gettysburg several times, including taking a Leland Gray field trip there. It was powerful. Well, Mr. Follett, our Stone Arch Bridge builder, was in the Company D of the 16th Vermont Regiment, which was at Gettysburg. Of course, when I was 8 years old, I didn't know that. And I also didn't know that I'd be involved in historic preservation like I am. And so this project is pretty important for a man who fought in the war, was at Gettysburg, watched perhaps Pickett's charge, came back, and then built a bunch of bridges that stand today when many bridges, courtesy of some of our major floods, have disappeared. So with all of that, I introduce Heidi Clausen, who will introduce Michael as our guest speaker. And thank you very much for coming, and we'll have more conversation when we have refreshments.
My purpose is really to introduce the bridges and just sort of a little bit of the background and so on. This lovely shot here, when it gets darker, you can see what a beautiful shot was taken by Andy Snelling. Currently, this is last year of our bridge. We do have some cards back there that you can see much more clearly what that photo is. But in a few minutes, it'll be getting darker, and maybe you'll see better photos, we hope. So, welcome to our presentation on the solid stone arch bridges. We're happy that so many people are interested in these unique bridges. As the Preservation Trust has told us, we need to work together as a team in order to coordinate our efforts to preserve these architectural wonders. Stones are falling out, and we need to act now. Now we're expecting to see a picture of James Follett up here in the Civil War. There is our man, as Charlie was saying, and he was the builder of these bridges in Townshend, and he was a farmer without any training in architecture, but as an intuitive engineer and skilled craftsman, he built as many as 40 bridges across Vermont and New Hampshire, beginning in 1894 and ending in 1910 with the West Townsend Bridge, which is the one we first saw. You can read a bit more about this extraordinary citizen of Townshend in the Stone Arch Bridge brochure, which hopefully most of you have already picked up. And there is another picture of Follett in a more mature age. Presumably he'd already built a lot of bridges by then. So the significance of our bridges. The Follett Stone Arch bridges are among the last remaining structures of their kind in Vermont. Of an estimated 40 stone bridges built by Follett, there are now only 9 left. 6 in Townshend, 2 in Putney, and 1, we think the one in Brookline is really definitely a Follett bridge that was just discovered by us. The people in Brookline knew it. The Townshend Historical Society is campaigning to save the Follett Stone Arch bridges as monuments to man's ingenuity. Citizens of Townshend also value these structures as sources of local pride and as resources for the purpose of attracting tourists to the area. What makes these bridges unique? Each Follett bridge is a distinct gem, designed to the specific needs of the site and according to the type of stone at hand, which was mostly granite and fieldstone. Site conditions and the shape of the stones define the uniqueness of each bridge aesthetically. That's why they look pretty. At least to me, they look very pretty. And now we have Fairbrook Bridge, and again, this is a nice photo by Andy Snelling. What you will be saving if you join in our efforts. The size of the bridges varies. Measuring from the stream bed, one is only 3 feet tall, that's the Buck Hill, while the largest arch, West Townsend Bridge, stands 16 feet above the water. Whether short or tall, they are all important, and according to the National Register, as a whole, they constitute a highly representative and intact record of an extraordinary native building. These structures are all works of art. Indeed, it could be argued that these bridges represent a sort of oeuvre, which is a French word meaning a grouping of artistic works created by one person, from the dictionary. The 3 structures that are in most need of attention are the bridges at West Townsend, Negro Brook, and Fairbrook. However, at present, we are concentrating on shoring up the West Townsend Bridge until full restoration can be attempted. Crossing Tannery Brook on Back Wyndham Road, this bridge was built in 1910 and is still in use 100 years later. Unlike most concrete bridges, that are built to last only 30 or 40 years. It goes without saying that no one would favor a short-lived concrete bridge to replace these unique stone arch bridges that could last hundreds of years if properly managed and maintained. Now we have another picture, again by Andrew Snelling. That's a lovely photo. Again, it's on the back table. It looks a little more prominent on the back table than it does here. But anyways, it's a nice romantic shot. And we're talking about progress in saving the bridges. Back in 1976, the Southern Vermont Conservation Society made a huge effort to save these bridges. At that time, 2 bridges needed to be saved from demolition, and the others needed restoration. The Conservation Society also wrote a wonderful pamphlet to inform the public about these neglected monuments to human ingenuity and stonecraft. After looking over our current bridge situation, you might be dismayed to see that 40 years later, all of the same issues mentioned by the Conservation Society still need to be addressed. However, we can celebrate the good part. All 6 bridges are still standing, and 4 were actually saved from demolition because the bridges were taken out of service. The unfortunate part is that while the plan was for the bridges to be bypassed and restored, they were in fact bypassed and ignored. Their structural integrity has continued to deteriorate for 40 years. This is a photo of Negro Brook Bridge. During a recent tour, we gave the select board and for the representatives from VTrans, the Department of Transportation. The town is expecting to apply for a grant from VTrans. Why do we all want to save the bridges? Here's a great quote from Maximilian Farrow, historical architect at the Preservation Partnership. Although Farrow said this way back in 1976, it's still true today. It's rather a long quote, so please bear with me. In an increasingly impersonal age, America has turned to historic preservation to rekindle our national and local sense of identity and our cultural roots. Achievement in a broad sense requires self-confidence, and self-confidence begins with knowing who we are. It is an amazing thing to realize that James Otis Follett, an unschooled local farmer, could, at the age of 51, teach himself how to build bridges out of local fieldstone. It is more amazing to note that he survived to build 40 or so, and that most were as graceful as the work of any apprentice master mason. And in addition, that none have been known to structurally fail. Yet, chiefly through thoughtless demolition, only 10 now remain, some of them carrying truckloads undreamt of in Follett's time. To preserve these bridges today is to preserve direct evidence for all future generations of what determination alone can achieve. The determination of a simple Vermont farmer without the aid of education, modern technology, or any other similar advantage. In our opinion, such evidence is well worth keeping. And that's the end of this quote. Next, we have a photo of Michael Weitzner doing emergency repairs in the West Townsend Bridge. Hopefully, this will keep the stones from falling out until the project is funded. If it were a little darker, you can see how deep that hole is, but Michael's going to show us bunches more photos of his lovely, from his report. So I would like to just tell you a little bit about Michael. He was a stonemason extraordinaire who was issued in 2003 a Master Craftsman Certificate from the Dry Stone Walling Association of Great Britain. He is also one of the founders of the Stone Trust in Dummerston and is a regular instructor there. In addition, he is sole proprietor of Thistle Stoneworks in Brattleboro. Based in Brattleboro since 1996, Michael was born in Switzerland and has also lived in Spain, England, Scotland, and the United States. His fascination with dry stone began at an early age when he was introduced to it by his Swiss grandfather. Recently, Michael has provided consultancy services for a dry stone arch bridge in New Hampshire, and he has just completed a 90-page conditions assessment of our local Townshend stone arch bridges. His report includes 50 pages of awesome photos, some of which we will see this afternoon. And now let's hear from Michael.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you all for coming. I hope I can do justice to the topic. Let's start with a little basic arch knowledge. Why do arches work? Arches work very simply because of physics. It's just down to physics. It's all about where the thrust goes. What holds all dry stone structures together is gravity and friction in the right measure. And forces need to be directed in the right way to ensure that the structure stands. So when you're trying to stand an open space, you want the forces to push to the sides. And if you look here, you can see that each of these little lines represents the break between two stones in this arch. And you can see that they're pretty much perpendicular to the face underneath. So each one of these allows forces to be transmitted horizontally, not horizontally, but perpendicular to that face along the axis of the arch, and resulting, all the weight that is on here would be pressing down here, out this way, or maybe even this way, depending on the shape of the arch. The Romans built fully semicircular arches, and the resultant of the forces on those arches push down more than push out. But subsequently, people were able to make the arches shallower by increasing the support out here. So if you have enough mass out here, you can actually make this a shallower arch. And that's exactly how the fallout arches are built. So, any questions on that so far? I'm only going to give you a very brief piece of information here. If you have questions right now about that, I'd be happy to answer them. So here's an example of an arch bridge in Marlborough, New Hampshire. This is the Bridge Street Bridge, and this photo and the next one are courtesy of the Marlborough Historical Society. And this is quite a large bridge. I'd say it's bigger than the West Townshend Bridge. And take a look at the next picture. It's the same crossing, but you can see that it's a completely different bridge. I have not researched the story, but it looks to me like this one replaced the one that we saw just earlier. And the reason I'm showing these is that there's a difference in the way that the spandrel walls were built. And what is a spandrel wall? Well, these things here above the arch, these walls are called spandrels. In fact, that surface, that plane, over any arch, including those there. Those are spangles. So that term is applicable to any arch. So, note here, there is a structure made of wood that was built and set on cribbing underneath. And the stone arch is built over the top of that. And when the arch is complete and has been loaded, this will be removed. And you should end up with something along those lines, hopefully staying. What happened here probably was a washout. And got a weir right behind that arch, and I'll bet that this area here or this area here failed as a result of water pulling on the stone. So, to James Otis Fall. This is the Buck Hill Bridge. It's the smallest and one of the crudest looking of his surviving bridges. Today it's just, if you walk through the woods, you don't even see it. If you walk along the track where it crosses that stream, you actually have to stand on one side of the track or the other to even notice that there's a stone structure underneath it. This is the other end. This is upstream of it, and here's downstream. And as I mentioned, the stones that compose the arch are local stone. It's a kind of stone called a gneiss, G-N-E-I-S-S. And as you can see, it's somewhat flat-bedded. There is a tendency for it to split. You can see that in this stone right here, or even perhaps here you can detect that there's an incipient split there. You can see it tends to flick, and that can be an issue for these bridges. This is the bridge that has been bypassed as a result of the construction of the flood control dam. The water course was changed. So this is, it used to be called Rogers Road or Rogers Way. It's now called Stone Archway. And this is the old stream bed here that carried the water that ran under the bridge. Obviously now there's no need for this bridge. It doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't cross any water. But it is still a good example of Fall's work. I'm sorry that the lighting here makes it hard to see these photos really well. What's interesting about this one is that the voussoirs, which incidentally is the name for each of the stones that comprise an arch, are of different sizes. And there's one here that sticks up like a great big fang. Very odd. Very So that's one side of it. That would have been the upstream side. And this is the downstream side. You can see here, there's a whole collection of odds and ends of scrap metal and junk lying around. It's not the most attractive sight. But with a bit of attention, it could still be part of a nice tour. And it's well worth preserving. Here's an accumulation of silt inside that bridge. And here you can make out, it's not very well, unfortunately, in this light, the individual voussoirs. And you can see they're actually quite massive. There's one. Some of them are 3, 4, even 5 feet long. For a little bridge that's maybe 12 feet from one side to the other. Here's another view from inside. And you can see it's a relatively crudely built arch. There are some rounded stones in it. There are odd shapes that have been chosen to try to match some of those more rounded stones. And typically, when we build an arch, we try to make the stones fit as closely together as possible. But when we're working with rough stuff like this, it's very difficult to do that. And the fact that Follett and his crew managed to build this thing with fairly coarse material, and it's still standing today, is a testament to their skill. There's that same part of the bridge seen from the other side. Interesting little thing here is this little bit of infill. And that's basically trapped underneath this. If there were no weight on it, these might just as well fall out. This is the other side, on the other side. And you can see, in fact, in all of these pictures, you can see that there's some mortar. It's actually concrete mix that appears to have been applied at some point. I don't know when. Perhaps there's a record somewhere in town archives that could tell us when. But that's concrete that was applied in an effort to either stabilize or maybe try to reduce the amount of material falling through if gravel was being used over the top, since it would have been a ground road as it is today. Here's I mentioned the stones falling out earlier. This one really is just a hole filler. It doesn't do anything practically.
Could you speak up? It's hard to hear you back here.
Okay, I'll attempt to do that. Acre of Brook. That was the photo that you saw earlier. The photo that you saw earlier of the V-Trans tour was taken right here. People were standing right there. And this bridge, here's what it looked like earlier this was taken in 1976 maybe. And you can see there's quite a difference between that and that. That's the same exact side of the bridge. We're looking from upstream down through. Notice the mountain in the background there. And there it is again. And you can see how a large part of the roadway has been lost here. So this spandrel has fallen out. And you can see some of it's falling out here too. So this roadway is no longer intact as it was when this photo was taken. But you can see how coarsely built that spandrel wall is, which it fits fine with the rest of it, but that might be a factor in the fact that it's fallen out. This is looking at that same bridge underneath, and unfortunately I can't really make it out here, but this is what it is today, and that's what it was when that was taken, maybe 40 years earlier, 50 years earlier. Unfortunately, we can't make out the shapes of the stones too well in these photos with the light that we have, but here you can see that this stone is longer than 1/2 of this total length here. And that's quite unusual in my judgment. I don't see that very often. The longer the voussoirs are, the more likely it is that they will crack under the stresses across them. That's a pretty impressive little piece of work there.
So what kind of stone is that?
Yeah.
Why would he use it in that place rather than as a foundation? Do you have any sort of inkling as to that huge rock?
The likelihood is that, well, firstly, if you were going to use a large stone in a foundation, it would need to be really massive in order to resist cracking. That's one thing. Not a long stone. There's a little less force on that there than there might be lower down, especially if what it's resting on is uneven. So that's one thought that occurs to me. Another thought is that when building on an uneven surface, it's much easier to use stones that will accommodate, so you can work up and down over that uneven surface. Now, we don't know how uneven that surface is without taking this apart. One other thought that I have is that maybe he liked the idea of putting that big stone up there.
Did oxen move that stone, or, I mean, that must weigh 2,000 pounds or something?
Yeah, most of the movement of rock that happened before we had hydraulics, or steam-powered derricks, or even animal-powered derricks, was carried out using teams of oxen or horses. These bridges would have been built, I'm guessing, with derricks. They probably used derricks. They were probably horse-powered, possibly oxen-powered derricks. And they would have set up for a bridge like this. They might have set up just one derrick on one bank and just swung the stones to where they needed them. A derrick is a crane. That's all it is. Most derricks have a single pivot at the bottom with an arm and stays holding the arm up and stays holding the thing from falling over, so it can pivot on its own axis. Yeah.
Question about the stone. Some of the stones are very rough, as you said. Some are much smoother. Did he do a lot of shaping and chipping?
So some of these stones have been used pretty much as they were found, and some of them have been shaped. It's hard to see it in these photos because of the light, but I'm looking here at this one. I can see marks there that suggest to me that this one was drilled and split. And if we were to go back and look at, let's see here. Yes, here. This is back in the Stone Archway Bridge. And if you look here, you can see the split, the drill marks from where this was split. And also here, there's mortar staining on them. But you can see these were split. All of them. So he used a mixture of shaping and found materials. Okay. Bearbrook Road. So here you can see the old roadway, and right next to it is the currently used roadway. And this guardrail, kind of ironically, is planted right in the middle. I think I'm about to lose this pointer. Right in the middle of the old roadway. Pretty unprepossessing thing to look at when you see it like this. But as happened with the Negro Brook Bridge that we just looked at, there's a large portion of the spandrel that's collapsed on either side, and so the roadway doesn't look flat anymore. You can actually see some of the hump of the bridge there. What's interesting to note about all of these bridges is that there's very little rise above the crown of the arch. What's the crown of the arch? Okay, but your mind won't tell you. It's the highest point on the arch. Okay, so most of these bridges have very little fill above that crown. thing to notice. This is that same bridge looking downstream, and behind it you can see the box culvert. It was a poured in place concrete box culvert. That was built, I think, in 1977. Here you can see how the spandrels falling out there. There's some concrete here, and you can't see it very well in this photo, but there's also concrete over here. Again, this is an earlier photo. This is 1976. Here's that concrete. Same concrete as this, but this was added later, probably within a year or so of when this photo was taken. That's pulling back upstream a little bit from where the last photos were taken, and you can see that the bank here was held up by a retaining wall. In effect, a wing wall, as it's called in bridge terminology. And it was a fairly coarsely built wall. I don't know if it has been rebuilt maybe several times in its life. There were logs placed here in an attempt to reduce the amount of loss of fill behind the wall. And that's also, as you can see, tumbling into the river. Probably a result of washout. What is that? Anybody would wonder what that is. It's actually the same bridge but seen from downstream before the installation of the concrete culvert. And unfortunately, it's a small picture and very difficult to see in these light conditions, so I'm not going to talk much more about it. Here's more of that concrete that we saw from upstream on this side. Concrete was applied in 2 or 3 different stages over time in an attempt to reduce the amount of plucking action that the water in the stream might exert on the foundation of the bridge. And I'm hoping, yeah, here's another, that same view, you can see the concrete culvert to the right there. Here's what it looked like in 1976. And there's what it looks like today. And I don't know if you can see very well here. There is a hole here. This is just open, where in 1976 there was concrete. There's that same hole, and if you look carefully, you can see a shape that is not stone. Anybody guess what that is? It's a log, and I think you're right, it's probably hemlock. A lot of stone bridges, or bridge substructures like those under covered bridges, were built on log cribbing, which is typically filled with rock. So if you want to see a good example of that approach to building a support structure, go and check out the Green River Dam, which was restored a few years ago. Green River Dam down in Guildford. Beautiful job done down there. And you can see some of those logs actually are still the original ones. They managed to reuse some of them. And so they're over 200 years old. Water preserves wood pretty well. It stays waterlogged. This bridge has a wood crib underneath it on this side, and on the other side it rests directly on what we call ledge, bedrock. That is that same side, but looking up at the called the Expenditures, or the underside of the arch. And you can see there's a lot of mortar. Every joint has been mortared. And that was done after the fact. It wasn't built with mortar. So somebody at some point decided that, well, this thing's moving, let's try to prevent damage, further damage, by mortar. This is the other side of the street. So now we're standing on the side where that log was. And if you look carefully, look closely, you can see here, this is all bedrock. But sloping down towards the stream, there's a big crack in the bedrock. And here you can see where some of it's broken away, which has had no effect on the bridge. It's just something to notice. That's the nature of this stone. And it's the same stone that is used in the bridge. This is a little buttress-like structure. And I'm guessing that it was built here to support the roadway as it bends to the left and really around away from the bridge. Probably because there wasn't a good surface to run a wing wall straight out from here. So we just built this little rectangular buttress here. In this buttress, there are several running joints. You can see one right here. And the whole thing is leaning outwards. Does anybody not know what a running joint is? Okay. So, when we're building dry stone, generally speaking, we're building with stones set horizontally and trying to level them as we're setting them. And just as with brickwork, we try to cross each joint. We cross each joint with a stone. So where two stones meet, there should be a stone crossing that joint. If you don't do that, you're going to end up with what's called a running joint that has potential for movement, laterally, or this way. If you've ever stacked a whole bunch of books tall on the floor and walked past it on a floor like this, a wooden floor, you'll notice that they do this, right? The stacks of books jiggling around. So if you want to prevent those books from jiggling around, you just cross the stacks together and they'd be more solid. Similar when you're maybe stacking your firewood. So running joints are a weakness in the dry stone wall built using that method. So here, that's that same end of the bridge that we were just looking at. We're looking at, in the next photo that I just showed you, we're looking at this area here. Hard to see it in this picture, but this stone rests directly on the rock, the bedrock beneath. And there it is again. And its bedding planes, and some stone has bedding planes, are set vertically. Which is interesting given that this is the kind of stone that can split along the bedding planes. It hasn't done so, but there it is. You can see here a split in the stone. Right there.
How important is it to maintain the outside pressure on that arch while you're going up?
While it's being built,
Yeah.
it's important to have enough mass in place that as the arch is being built, it doesn't push out the abutments that it's resting on. That said, while you're building it, most of the weight is resting on the form. Because until you have completed the arch, there's nothing for the lateral force to bear on. So it's all going down. And once you've put the last stones in place, joining the two halves, you bring it up equally on each side until you get to the middle, and then fill those last few spaces. Some people talk in terms of keystones, and the term keystone, I think, simply illustrates the fact that you have to lock the thing together somehow. But the keystone is no different, really, from any of the other stones in the arch. It has no greater significance other than maybe it was the last stone put in place. In many cases, a nicely built arch with a pretty face to it, where they shaped each stone so it could be all the same type. They might actually shape that last stone to a particular design to emphasize it. And it's just a decorative feature. It doesn't have any structural significance other than being that last stone. So that's that same area. There's the big stone. And if you look carefully, you can see this is not originally two or three stones. This was one stone. These are cracks. These are cracks here. This is a crack, crack. Cracking stone. This stone cracks. And that's part of the problem with the Fairfield Bridge. In fact, it's 90% of the problem with the Fairfield Bridge. Between one thing and another, it's opening up around here, which is why this concrete was put in place in an attempt to prevent this side of that end of the arch from falling apart. So this area here, I think we'll see in the next picture. It's hard to see it very clearly, but you can see that there's a crack here, and this is all opening up here. So this chunk is falling away towards us. And maybe the next one. But what I was trying to illustrate there is that even a really well-built bridge can fail if you use material that doesn't last. So we talk about, okay, the durability of stone, that's a relative thing. There's durable stone and then there's more durable stone. And more durable stone, if you want really durable, granite is a good choice. This nice, not too bad, but it's obviously not great either. And it did last a lot longer than concrete would have lasted. We heard earlier 30 to 40 years. Actually, more like 60 is pretty typical for maximum strength of concrete, and then it goes downhill from there. Depends on how it's been poured, what the mix is, what reinforcement we use, and so on and so forth, and also what it's exposed to. So within the different material types, there are also different grades of material. So we see that here.
Is the white line coming out of the cement?
I suspect so.
So it's leaching out.
Yeah, Charlie's asking about this here, I think, yeah? And I think that might be, as you say, coming out. That might tell us that there's a certain amount of acidity in the water that's coming through here, which makes sense if it's a nice, a nicose area. And water is probably somewhat acidic. Yeah. If we were a little further over, where we'd be into the Weitzner River Formation, limestone formation, you wouldn't see that. Any questions about the Fairbrook Bridge?
Does the vegetation which grows over time, the roots and so forth, tend to push the stones apart or hold them together?
It will tend to damage things. It will tend to push apart. Usually what happens is that roots are not the first thing that find their way into a crack. It's small amounts of organic matter, and then the mosses will take lichens and mosses, and then gradually you start getting enough soil there that seeds can lodge, or that roots will start searching their way through. In the case of larger roots, they can actually split stones that have fissures in them. I've seen that happen. It's amazing. You see a tree root this big going into a rock and spreading out. It still carries the same amount of sap, but it's flattened inside that crack. And of course, as it grows, it's just adding a little bit of pressure all the time, a little bit, until eventually that crack is big enough that the whole thing might just separate.
Sidewalks in the cities.
For example, yeah. So, and then cracks usually happen for two reasons. One is mechanical failure, shearing, and sometimes that might be a result of a microfissure that was present in the stone before it was even set. So it's something you don't see. You think, oh, that's a good stone, I'll use that there. And you come back a year later and, whoa, there's a crack in that stone. I never expected that. And I've seen it happen many times. So that's one possibility. The other is that you set the stone in such a way that there's enough force on it, and the stone is thin enough relative to that force, and given the quality of the stone itself, how well cemented the particles of the stone are together, that it can crack. We'll actually see an example of that, I hope, in one of the photos of the West Townshend Bridge. But you can see here, that kind of cracking is most likely a result of a natural fissure that was there. That's my guess, because there's so many of these little cracks in the stone of this bridge. Incidentally, you can see here that this seems to have had split. This stone here is probably split. There's drill marks right there. So again, on the Fairbrook Bridge, fault used a combination of materials. Any other thoughts?
How do you put it back?
That is a real conundrum. The unfortunate truth about this bridge is that, number one, it's a relic now. It's not used for anything functional. It's there because it was bypassed and, as Heidi said, ignored. So you can continue to ignore it, which hopefully won't happen, or you can try to stabilize it. But anything beyond stabilization would involve complete reconstruction. And you would not be using the same material.
Then it would not be a fallen bridge.
It would no longer be a fallen bridge, precisely. So it begs the question, what are you preserving? Are you preserving a crossing, a functional crossing, or are you preserving an artifact, an item of work, an example of somebody's life work that's worth looking after for a while, because you're only going to be able to preserve that for a while. It's not going to last forever, unfortunately. And it's one of those things. Hindsight is 20/20. If Follow had known that his bridge was going to crack apart like that, he probably wouldn't have used that stone. Or he might have said, well, I can build you the bridge out of this stone, and it'll cost you this much, but it'll only last this long. Or we can spend this much and get a bridge that'll last us much longer. And that's kind of what we have to weigh up today. We're coming to the point where West Townshend has a lot of strength to it, and there's a good chance that it could last for at least another 100 years, maybe 200, maybe more. This one, this is the Simpson Brook Bridge, or Simpsonville Bridge, on Route 35, just north of here. And there is a parapet, which was mortared. In fact, the whole bridge is mortared. I don't remember when this was built. Does anybody have the date for this bridge? Anyway, it was one of the later ones. And it was built with blocks of cut granite. And here's what it looks like today. And the reason I'm showing that picture and not one that's more similar to this one is that you can't see it from above at all. It was widened, the road was widened, and they added in 2 sections of steel culvert, one on each end, mirroring the same shape of the bridge. You can see how neatly made this bridge is. Beautifully coarse, beautifully cut stones, and they might have been bedded in mortar, it looks that way, or they might have been mortar pointed after the fact. Either way, the mortar's not doing a whole lot. It's mostly down to the granite and how well constructed that thing is. What I don't know, and I don't think anybody does, is what's underneath, what are the abutments? Is it on bedrock? I'm assuming that it might be, because it's so strong and so stable. And there's been plenty of flood water through there and over the top of it, I would guess. So that's the Simpson Brook Bridge.
Would it be safe to assume that those rocks came up on the railroad from Dummerston? Because they're so evenly cut?
I think that's a reasonable assumption. They would have sourced it from the nearest suitable place. And it's a lovely thought, isn't it, that, this was from just down the river.
Yeah, the railroad was functioning at that time. So
Right. There's no reason why.
as was the forest.
Yep. Now, we come to the Tannery Brook and West Townsend, and this photo, I'm not sure what the date on it is, but I believe it was found in the house of one of Follett's great-grandchildren or grandchildren. And you can see that there's a wall here. So this is looking upstream. And what is now Route 30 runs over here. So that's beginning of where this is in relation to Route 30. So this is the back Wyndham Road runs over this bridge. And these parapets that we have today on the West Townsend Bridge were there then, and I suspect that they date from fairly early in the life of the bridge, probably 1920s or something like that. And they might have had wooden rails similar to the ones that you saw on the Negro Brook Bridge before that. This was subsequent to 1938, and at that point they had dumped a whole load of fill here because that wall collapsed, probably washed out from below. No effect on the arch, but that wall had begun to fail already at that point. And this is today. So it doesn't look very different. When you look a little more closely, you can see differences. So it's a slightly different angle. You can see that the concrete is failing in places. Here's a little patch that was applied. Here's another piece that was patched in. In fact, in that photo that I asked you to show of myself, you can see that chunk of concrete there. It was about this big and about this deep. And it was just sitting in that hole. And a couple of weekends ago, I was starting to patch this hole here. And I thought, well, patching around that chunk of concrete. And while I was working on it, it started to move. So I pulled it out and let it roll down the bank. It's not that bit, unfortunately. But, so that gives you an idea of how big the hole is here at this end of the spandrel. There's a whole bunch of fill that was applied over the years. There was the original one that we looked at earlier. And then even just earlier this year, there's been fill applied here to try to minimize the loss of material from there. This is looking at the upstream side of the arch of the bridge, 1976. And here's today. Or I should say, April of this year. And you can see here, there's this pipe sticking out of the parapet here. That's an attempt to catch some of the water that ponds behind the parapet on top of the tarmac that's there. And channel it away from the ends of the parapet. And we'll come to that in a bit. Here's what it looks like underneath. And this is the, so we say the northernmost end of the bridge. So that little pipe, I don't know if you can make it out here, but the pipe sticks out over on this end. And here's a wing wall, which is actually collapsing. And here's that area that we looked at earlier with all the fill. This is the bottom of the upstream side of the arch, right on the corner. And you can see here, there is a crack in this stone. Remember what I can't remember who it was asking about why not use a long stone down below. Well, here's a good example of why you might not. You've got all this uneven stuff here. Look at the cracks in the bedrock here. And this stone is just making up that space for this first stone in the arch proper to sit on it. And somebody's patched this here with a bit of concrete and small rocks. So this is a point to watch. This needs to be monitored. And that's that same spot right there. You can see the little stone. And there's you can see fill here. And so what's been happening with this particular bridge, and it's common on a lot of bridges that have dry stone or mortar stone spandrels, is that the water is allowed to run off right next to the spandrel wall, and then it erodes this area here. And this is bulging out as a result of all the water that's been coming down through here and freezing and thawing, is my guess, plus all the root action from the vegetation that's up above.
What happened to the stone in between? It just washed out?
Yeah. So, frost action, erosive action on the fill behind the wall, it's small grade material, gravelly stuff that was typically used behind these. I looked at a bridge in New Hampshire recently, and I was looking up through between the voussoirs because there was enough space between them that I could actually stick a whole arm right up through. there was gravel above it. Gravel, just like what you see on the road surface. So if you put that behind the wall, it's going to wash through it. And that's part of the issue with these spandrels. They've got gravel behind them. So frost action, washout, and roots keep all vegetation down around stonework, and it will be a lot happier. Definitely don't let trees grow in it or next to it. So this is, again, that end where that collapse had happened and where that big piece of concrete fell out. If you look carefully here, you can see how this is actually cantilevered out. It's almost corbelled, which means that you have, let's say this is my arm is the arch, the edge of the arch. And now set a stone here, so it's sticking out beyond the edge of the arch. And then the next one above that sticks out a little bit. That's what is happening here. Right here. And you can see it here too. I doubt that's by design. I think it's moved. I'm guessing, but I think it's moved. What could cause that kind of movement? I can think of just two things in this case. One is movement of the fill behind it as a result of frost, and the other is pressure from large vehicles. Because these spandrel walls weren't built with, 40,000-pound vehicles in mind. So every time you go over that, you push down a little bit. Push down a little, push down a little bit. And the walls are sitting outside what you're pushing on, so they go a millimeter at a time until you get to that.
There's also the vibrations.
And vibrations, yes. Vibration is a big piece in that equation. This is the other side of the stand, so this is now the right bank. In other words, it's the root surface side, and you can see there's a nicely mortared wing wall here that's in great shape, and over here there's bedrock. It's hard to see in this picture. And then in the 1970s, for some weird reason, they put this great big mass of concrete here, just threw it in over the top of all the junk that was there. And I'm not sure that it does anything. It was there put in maybe to stabilize ostensibly the bedrock, but it seems to me like this is resting pretty securely on the bedrock. So I don't know exactly what motivated this deposition here. But there it is, it's there. And it ain't pretty. So here you can see the bedrock. And you can see the hole underneath this skirt of concrete. There's the roadway, and it's hard to see it very well, but you can see the crushed stone that was poured here. It's actually crushed gravel, I should call it, because it has fines in it. And there's some over here as well. So that's the Route 30 end, and this is the northern end of things. And all the way along here, in a heavy rain, you'll see ponding here and here, right at the end of the bridge, and water runs right off there. And part of the reason for that is that I suspect that the material underneath is being lost and it's sinking down. Another reason for it is that when you have a tar road like this, and you resurface it, you just add material, and you add material, and you add material. So this gradually becomes higher over here. And if this stuff is sinking, now it gets more pronounced. So something needs to be chain there in order to reduce the amount of runoff that is coming off right on the ends of these parapets. And what I'm suggesting should be done here is to regrade this road right from up here all the way down to this corner. This actually bends around like this. Put in adequate drainage, put in a curve along this edge and this edge with catch basins on each end, on each side. So 4 catch basins, proper drainage, and you could probably eliminate most of the erosional problems that we've seen. Between that and rebuilding the spandrel walls with bigger stone and putting coarser infill between the spandrel walls, I think we can end up with a really strong structure that would complement the actual arch, which is very robust. I mentioned earlier a crack, and I think this is where you'll see it, right here. This is a really long stone, and it has 2 joints right opposite each other here. And it is cracked right there. So that's a good example of how the ratio of length to thickness is important when you're choosing your stone and building something like this. There's a lot of force on that rock. So parapets. These parapets are leaning outwards, and I doubt that they were built that way. You can see that they've been patched probably several times in their lifetime of maybe about 90 years now. This is the other side of that little pipe. And if you were to walk out onto this bridge, you would see that there's actually a raised bit of asphalt here in an attempt to carry water past this point, and that this is just blind right here. There's a hole here. But over here, there's a hole that drops down into the fill beneath the road. And doesn't even go into this pipe, it just exits down here somewhere. So erosion continues to happen. You can see the lean on this. This is the you're looking towards Route 30 there. So that's the upstream side. And this is now the downstream side looking away from Route 30. And you can really see the lean on it here, actually. And how it's being patched. That's looking down from above, or off to one side of that very same end. And you can see the spalling breaking up concrete. And at this end, there's also some of that movement of stone that's being pushed out of the spandrel wall. So that's slightly shallower angle, looking at the same thing. And you can see here, this is just material that's being washed down the bank. All of this is just washed down from above. It's gravel and maybe some other debris from the road. Here's where that hole was that where a piece of concrete fell out, right below here. You can see how this is all washed out. There's a big hollow underneath this end of the parapet and underneath the asphalt. And that's what I'm going to be patching over the next couple of weeks or so.
And the stone wall is just all covered with cement or with concrete on top of it, on that parapet?
So this is poured concrete. This whole thing is poured concrete. And the earliest concrete might be the kind of we call rubble concrete, where it's formed and we put in concrete with big rocks in it. And more recently we use steel to reinforce it.
But it's never been a wall.
I doubt that there was ever a stone wall atop this bridge. So the stone wall goes up to the roadbed, and that was it, is my guess. And then they poured this is very narrow bridge. It's only wide enough for one vehicle at a time. There's that hole. Here. So you can see all this stuff that's been added here in an attempt to divert water from this corner, yet it washes out every now and then. And here you can really see how this is potentially going to happen. It's not moving because there's enough weight on it, but who knows how long it will stay that way. There it is.
And what are you patching it with?
Dry stone. So, but when you saw that picture of me earlier with the tire lever in my hand, I was actually just cleaning out this gubbins here down to something that I could work on, which is actually this stone right here, I think is maybe still there. And I started laying stone in there, pieces that reached back, and I will go back very soon and keep doing that until I fill it up to the top here. Here you can see an attempt to make a repair. I don't know when this dates from. Originally I was thinking I would just do something very similar, maybe a little neater. But then I decided that it would make more sense just to use dry stone rather than messing around with molding. There's a hole here that's just in the concrete. I'm not too concerned about that.
And is that the concrete piece that fell out, that large piece right there?
This is the piece that fell out right here.
That one, yeah. So it's now or much bigger?
Yes. As I said, this thing is about, from the end to end, about 3 feet long, and maybe 18 inches across this way, and probably about 18 to 24 inches deep.
And that used to connect to the top?
I think it fell out here.
Yep, exactly.
So all this material was down here, it fallen out, and then it just settled into that spot. And obviously this here came with it, it must have been up here. And this is probably part of the same repair, I'm guessing. So that's about it. Does anybody want to go back and look at anything or talk about anything specific? Or general questions?
How long would it have taken them to construct an original bridge, do you think?
Let's take this one as an example. Probably shaping the stones, depending on how many people are doing it. But if one person or maybe two were shaping the stones together, you could easily spend a month just shaping stones for this. So that's the piece. Building a formwork probably took about a week. I wouldn't be surprised. You could do it in less time. Probably budget. Setting the stones of the arch would take, actually not that a huge amount of time, but probably at least a couple of weeks, maybe they've taken over it to do it right. Any preparation work would probably have taken a week or two at least. And then building the spandrel walls could have been done in, I'd say, as little as 4 weeks altogether. Probably less than that. So you're looking at months of work. Probably 3 months altogether, something.
One bridge per summer, probably.
Yeah, I'm guessing. Yeah, the
But
Buckhill
you
Bridge.
gotta do the derrick.
Yeah, the derrick is something that you might make on site, or you might just have one that you use and move it around. My guess is that they would have made one for the size of the span that they're working on. That seems like it.
Were any or all?
Deteriorating walls, so they would have kept a running gear and any hoops that they used to strengthen the ends of the derrick. Things would have been made on site. A lot of those machines were made on site.
And this one was built in 1910?
That's my understanding. It was completed in 1910. It probably meant it was built entirely in 1910.
So do we know if, because that road goes back to 1780, 1730s, do we know how many covered bridges or other ways they get across the stream? You would know that, but I was asking this, so
No, we don't really know.
it's kind of interesting. I never put that in
We know
perspective.
the family said we built an average of 2 bridges a year, considering his lifespan when he started and finished, and if you did 40, you average that out. So some of them were little bitty bridges, like Buck Hill, and some of them were bigger bridges.
The Buck Hill Bridge, for example, that could be built in a week.
Yeah.
Quite easily. By
And that might have
by
been
just 3 or 4 people.
Yeah, it might have been built to serve as Stockbridge, which was a new location for that bridge, and then they needed to get up the hill from there, so we
Right.
suspect it was done about that same time
That makes
as
sense.
Stock Cover Bridge.
I would guess that this crossing had a wooden bridge over it at one point. Whether it was covered or not, who knows? It's likely that it would have been. And why would it have been replaced by a stone bridge? Probably because James Follett was a good salesman, is my guess.
You use a lot of granite to build bridges,
For bridges like this, granite is the material of choice.
and you use cement too.
You can, but it's not necessary.
You can put granite together without cement?
Yes.
So is that what you're going to use for most of your orderable practice?
For which now?
Is that what you're going to use? You're going to use a lot of granite to rebuild these bridges?
If I were specifying stone for the spandrel walls of this bridge, I would suggest granite.
You order it from New Hampshire?
No, there's plenty of granite in Vermont, but it doesn't really matter where it comes from.
I wondered if it was a different type of granular stone closer to the coastline it is in the state of Vermont.
That's right, yeah, there are different granites.
It's harder.
Yeah, the Barry granite is actually pretty hard, the Barry gray. Personally, if I had a choice, I would be happy with the softer Townshend granite if I could get it, because it's what would belong to that bridge. And that would be more historically appropriate, so to speak, even though it would be a very different appearance. And if we go back to the very beginning of this, you maybe remember the 2 photos that I showed of the bridge in Marlborough.
And then when you finish with that, have a few closing remarks about the project financially. How much it's going to cost to do all this lovely work. So wait for a couple more minutes before you leave, and then we're going to have some lovely refreshments available in the back, and a few cards and things, stone arch cards on the table that haven't been bought yet.
This bridge in Marlborough shows a rougher structure to the spandrel walls than this one, which is all ashlars, as we would call it. That looks neater, but it's not necessarily better or stronger. When you build something long stones like this, unless those stones are really wide going back into the body of the bridge, they could suffer the same fate that we're seeing at West Townshend, where the walls are splitting open. Whereas if you were to run, say this stone is, for argument's sake, say it's 8 feet long and only 2 feet wide. If you were to turn that stone to 90 degrees, you just have 2 feet showing on the end here, and it runs back 8 feet. It's much stronger. So that's what we try to do with stone when we're building walls of all kinds, but particularly for these. You want the stone running length into the wall, perpendicular to the face, and that gives it much more strength.
Michael,
Yeah.
do they slope the walls of the bridge inward, or these walls plumb straight up?
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. And that's another reason to use long stones, is that most spandrel walls, most bridges have vertical spandrel walls. Because you'd have to build a much bigger arch if you were to slope the walls back. A lot of dry stone walling methods specify that we taper the walls from bottom to top so that they're almost like a pyramid in shape. That's an exaggeration, of course, because if you're taking an Egyptian pyramid, that's at 40 degrees. I don't know what the actual name is. We don't do that. You might go in, for every foot of rise, you would go in an inch, maybe even 2, depending on the conditions. Sometimes just half an inch. So that taper, if you were to put it on the wall like this, would mean that you'd be in several feet at the top by the time you get there.
Bridge is the major expense of $280,000. Being part of our roadway system, we feel that the town of Townsend will want to give significant financial support to this bridge in conjunction with a grant that is available to them from VTrans, the Vermont Department of Transportation. However, there's another great emergency on West Hill Road, unfortunately, that is ahead of us in line, so we may have to wait a while, unless we can have 2 emergencies at once, which I'm not sure if the state will allow that, but we'll try. Next, in size of expenditures, the Fair Brook Bridge at $100,000. These are all approximations. The total overall cost comes to about $400,000 for all 4 bridges. And this does not include road work, such as Michael was describing, embankment and drainage issues, or the need for rerouting while restoration is in progress. While that might seem like a lot of money, it's interesting to note that back in 2005, the town of Putney was able to raise $360,000 for just 1 bridge, with the help of town money and grant writing. So at the invitation of the select board, we, the Townshend Historical Society, are helping out with grant writing for the Townshend process of raising money for the bridges. However, it's important to note that all of these grants are matching grants. So we will be expecting the town and all the rest of us to be raising funds in order to make progress with saving the bridges. So, and lastly, I'd like to mention there's stuff on sale back there. I think Charlie's mentioned it. There's nice photos of bridges, and there's food at the back, and we want to thank Michael very much for his lovely presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael and Heidi, and the team for putting all this together. If anyone wants to contribute to the process by the raffle, we'll have a couple more minutes while you're having refreshments, and then we'll draw the numbers. You can come up here and I can cut you a raffle ticket if you're interested. Otherwise, there are refreshments in the back where Lee is. And thank you very much for coming. Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie.